Hello everyone and welcome to the final round of the Meltwater Champions Chester Finals 2022. It's not as suspenseful as we thought it would be since Magnus won the tournament with a full round spare. He won it in the previous round, and the match against the Duda is the one that we were really looking forward to, as their games can also be really explosive. And I decided to show you one game from the match. It is the second game of the match. First one ended in a draw. It was a pretty much in an equal game throughout the entire game, but second one is well, a bit different. Now, before we check out the game, and it is a really nice one, I would just like to address one thing that a few videos ago I told you that someone sent me a message that I was mispronouncing Duda's name, Jan-Krzysztof Duda, and well, that person obviously tricked me, and then a lot of you guys sent me an email with an actual recording of your voice, as you are from Poland, how to pronounce his name. But one gentleman even sent me, there is on chess.com, when you create an account, or maybe it's just for grandmasters or very well-known players, there's actually an audio file where you can listen to Duda himself pronouncing his name, and he pronounces it like I do pretty much, or I try to reproduce it to the best of my abilities, but obviously it is very, very close to Jan-Krzysztof Duda. So I will be sticking to that, just in case you were wondering. Now, getting back to the game, Duda with the white pieces opens with pawn to c4. He goes for the English opening. We have g6, d4, and bishop to g7. We have pawn to e4, and now d6. We have knight to c3 and c5, striking in the center. d5, Duda grabs more space in the center, and now bishop captures on c3. Now, this is a very, very strange move in a Benoni type structure, because your dark square bishop is usually your most powerful piece, but I've seen similar lines before, and Magnus does go for it, even though out of all the moves, this is the least played one. So bishop captures on c3, b captures, and pawn to e5. So what did Magnus just do? He gave up one of his bishops and one of his stronger bishops to close the center completely and to double Duda's c-pawn. And on the other hand, Duda has a semi-open b file that he can use for his rook. He has the bishop pair, and he has a very clear way of what he wants to do. He wants to push f4, he wants to capture on e5, hope for d captures on e5. He will try to create a pass to d pawn, and that's basically the the simplistic version of it. So bishop to d3, continuing development, and knight to d7. We have pawn to f4, striking against the e5 pawn. E captures on f4, bishop captures on f4, and now queen to h4 with check. We have bishop to g3, and now queen to e7, putting pressure on the e file. Knight to f3, and now knight to h6. And here there is a game where castles was played, and probably you should play something like this, or even just develop the queen to d2, maybe go after that knight. But Duda goes for the immediate e5, and it is now, as of move 12, that we have a completely new game, and this is a very, very tricky variation, as you'll see. So Magnus says, all right, that looks like a free pawn, I'm gonna capture it. Knight captures on e5, knight captures, and now d captures on e5, and here Duda just castles. We have castles by Magnus, and now queen to d2, putting pressure on that knight on h6. So knight to f5, and now bishop captures on f5. Yeah, even though you have the bishop pair, the light square bishop isn't really useful here. It's better to keep the dark square bishop and try and take advantage of all the dark square weaknesses around Magnus's king. So bishop captures on f5, bishop captures, and now rook f2, preparing to double up on the f file. We have f6 by Magnus, now creating a very strong center here. The e5 pawn is nicely defended, but Duda, on the other hand, has a passed d pawn. So rook 8 to f1, and now rook 8 to d8 by Magnus. He could also consider something like rook f7 and then maybe doubling up on the f file. He goes for rook to d8 instead, and now queen to e3. Also, maybe you could consider a move like bishop to h4, but this is, of course, rapid, so players have to play very fast. Duda goes for queen to e3, puts pressure on c5. Magnus defends it, and now bishop to h4, putting pressure on this diagonal. So rook to d6, and now pawn to h3. Now, it's a very close position, and it's hard to actually push something. So Magnus moves his bishop back, bishop to d7, and now he wants to start advancing his pawns. So rook to f3, we have rook to f7, and now pawn to g4. We have bishop to e8 by Magnus, and now pawn to g5, putting a lot of pressure on that f6 pawn, forcing Magnus to advance it further. Pawn to f5, and now rook back to e1. We have e4, bishop to g3 now. This is the only good move Duda has in the position, and it's a very tricky one, because if Magnus were to trade here, let's say he captures on f3, queen captures on e7, captures, and rook captures on e7. After rook captures on e7, sorry, not rook e2, after rook captures on e7, both Magnus's rook on d6 and bishop on e8 would be hanging, and if you defended with rook to d8, okay, you've defended your pieces, but now bishop e5 going for rook g7, it's a very, very hard to play against this, and you still have to worry about the passed d pawn. You have to play bishop f7, and then you lose the a7 pawn, and it's just a really bad position for Magnus. He would struggle to find a move here. So instead, after bishop g3, rook back to d8, and now rook to f2. We have bishop to d7, and now bishop to c7, attacking the rook, maybe with some ideas of advancing the pawn to d6, but you have to be careful. Once you push d6, you no longer control c6 and e6 square. So rook to e8, and now we have queen to f4, adding a defender to that bishop. Like I said, if you push this right away, then you give up these two squares to Magnus, then he can even put a bishop on c6, so maybe not something you want to do. So after rook e8, we have queen to f4, and now bishop to c8. The bishop can be shifted now to b7 or even to a6 if needed. Here we have bishop to d6, attacking the queen, queen to d8, and now bishop to e5. And here Magnus could try a lot of things. Of course, Duda's plan is to put the bishop on f6, but Magnus is not interested in that. He just plays rook captures on e5, and this is where he says that, all right, the two rooks aren't very useful here. None of us can push any pawns, but if I give up my rook for your spectacular dark square bishop, as the bishop was about to control this entire diagonal, and you would probably have to capture it at some point, even if the bishop landed on f6. So he gives up the exchange. Captures, captures, and now queen captures on g5, snatching a pawn while he's at it. Rook to g2, and now queen back to f6. Magnus offers a queen trade now, and you should really not accept this. So queen to b8, Duda puts some pressure on the bishop here, rook to f8, defending the bishop, and now queen back to f4, and now bishop to a6. Magnus goes after the c4 pawn. Rook to e8 is also very strong. You just prepare queen to e5, and then white either trades queens or moves the queen, and then you continue pushing. So bishop to a6 is what Magnus played, putting pressure on the c4 pawn. Now pawn to h4. We have bishop captures on c4, and now pawn to d6. With h5, you probably have a bit more time to attack the black king. After d6, it's not easy to play this with white. Now Magnus plays queen captures on c3. We have rook to e3, attacking the queen, and queen to d4. Now putting pressure on the rook here. So h5, we have bishop to f7, now guarding the g6 pawn twice, and king to h2, unpinning, so now the rook can move. Rook to d8, and now rook e to g3. Duda brings everything into the attack. Queen captures on d6, and now queen captures on f5 as the g pawn is pinned. Rook to e8, now ready to push the passed e pawn, and now h captures on g6. H captures, and how do you play this? Well, the problem is you can't really do something like rook captures on g6 just yet, because the king is on h2. It'd be great if you could, but you can't. So king to h1, you have to unpin first. King to g7, and now rook to h3. We have queen to e6, offering a queen trade, and here Duda finds a very nice move that can only be beaten if Magnus finds one move that is even stronger than that move. So queen to h5, and now it's Magnus the move. There is only one good move for him to play, so feel free to pause the video and try to figure out how to get out of this mess while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the simple trade. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is queen captures on h3. That's the only way to stop any checks along the h file. Queen captures on h3 and rook to h8. Now winning back the queen. There's no way to defend. You have to capture. So queen captures, king captures, and now yes, you have a rook against the bishop, but Magnus is up 4 pawns. Imagine if you were up 4 pawns. That would be spectacular. So rook to d2, and now bishop to c4, getting ready to push that e pawn. Rook to d7, and now, okay, going after the a7 pawn, but now Magnus just captures on a2. We have rook captures on a7, bishop back to c4, and king to g1, and now bishop d3. Now he can start advancing both the c pawn and the e pawn. We have rook c7, c4, rook to b7, pawn to c3 now. Rook captures on b6, pawn to c2, rook to c6 now guarding the queening square, and pawn to e3. We have rook to c8 with check, king g7, we have king to g2, and now pawn to g5. King to f3, attacking the e3 pawn, now pawn to e2, and king to f2. So now rook guards the c1 square, king guards the e1 square, but who will guard the g1 square? That is the question. So Magnus advances the pawn to g4, king to e1, now pawn to g3, taking away both f2 and f1 squares from the white king, and now there is nothing for you to do. If you move the rook, or even if you start checking the black king will just go down the board, doesn't really matter. You will just push g2, and after king f2, okay, the king is overloaded, you will just advance 1 pawn to become a queen, and then you will get another queen. So Duda tries rook captures on c2, bishop captures, king captures, and now look at this. There are many ways to finish this game, but Magnus finds the most spectacular one, and that is bishop to d1 with check. This is how Magnus finishes finishes the position. Now if you capture the bishop, the king is too far away to stop the pawn from becoming a queen, and if you don't capture the bishop covers f3, the pawn covers f2, your only square is f1, so king to f1, and now Magnus would play bishop to f3, cutting off the king from reaching the pawn indefinitely. Would have to go all the other way around, and then you would have all the time in the world to advance your pawn to becoming a queen, and it's very simple to actually win this. Now all of these squares are not available to the white king. You can just move back and forth, like you can go to g1 and you can go to e1, okay, and then maybe you can go to d2, but what will you do there? And the black king will simply go all the way here, push g2, g1, and win the game. That's the simple way to do it. So yeah, after bishop to d1, Duda resigned, and a brilliant victory for Magnus Carlsen in round 2 of the final round of the Meltwater Champion Chester Finals. Game 3, where Magnus had the white pieces again, ended in a draw, and last game, the 4th game, where Magnus again had the black pieces, ended by Magnus winning that game. So he wins both of his games with the black pieces, and he wins the match 3-1, which is pretty awesome. And more and more people are just winning with the black pieces. Like, this is not the first time we see this. And so I don't forget the standings. These are the final standings of the Meltwater Champions Chester Finals. Let me just make that a little bit bigger. There you go. All right, so it's first place Magnus, second place Wesley So, Liam Le in third with 11, Jan-Krzysztof Duda with 10, Pragnananda, Arjun Ergaisi, Shakhriyar Mamedov, and Anish Giri with 6 points. And look at this, Magnus with 20 points in first place, second place Wesley with 13, and Liam Le in third place with 11. And now if you just do this, look at this. Yeah, again, if you remove Magnus from the tournament, it's a fairly close tournament. I mean, anyone could have taken this, but then you add Magnus to the tournament, and then it's basically a one-man show. So that's the game, and short coverage of this Meltwater Champions Chester Finals. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any game that I didn't cover and that you particularly enjoyed, maybe I've missed it, maybe it's really a spectacular game, do use hashtag suggestions so I can go over it and maybe I will review it. But if not, we are turning to some other events, as there are so many events being played nowadays. I already have a couple of suggestions from the World Team Championship, so we are going to look into that as well. But yeah, that's the game. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Francis Air, Carmen Polifronio, Sinister Pawn, Ravishing Reptiles, YouTube B4, and AI Mind for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check out on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.